Welcome back to another episode. I'm joined here today by my dear friend, Michael Dressel. He's going to talk to us about a very sexy thing known as health insurance. Right?
Yeah, I've never heard it, the medical insurance and sexy in the same sentence.
It's not the same. I know. I'm trying to get you all excited about what we're talking about today. But it's a very important topic to talk about, especially because a lot of times people don't understand the ins and outs of insurance. I've learned a lot in the last couple minutes of just us talking about this before we started this recording. So we're going to kind of go over a couple of things with Michael. Before we get started, Michael, kind of give us a small, 30 seconds backdrop of who you are and how you got to this point in medical insurance.
So 20 years ago, I was actually in college and had to get a steady career for my family. And I walked into Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas and started as a claims processor. So I worked my way up as a claims processor to membership and then management over that department. And then eventually I moved to Dallas to go into marketing.
Nice.
And then in 2010, I went to the broker side. So I've been in the business 20 years. Now 10 on the broker side, so I know all the products, all the carriers, and have relationships with all of them.
What's the difference between the broker side and what you were doing before?
So a carrier is where you're actually just you're basically working for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas and you're writing their products.
Okay.
With a broker, you can actually go to different carriers and get different products based on what the needs of the client is.
So it's very similar to kind of like auto insurance agents. You can have an independent auto insurance agent that can shop multiple agencies, or you have the one that's captive at maybe State Farm or Farmers.
Correct.
Or something like. Okay, great. So the question is then, what types of different insurances are there in the health realm? Just overall, there's 30, right? How many different types of products do you have?
There's quite a bit. So let's just talk about one particular thing. So individual insurance.
Yes.
Individual insurance, you usually have the Obamacare plans, which most people say are high priced. That's true to a degree. But right now, especially with COVID,
yes,
a lot of people qualify, and they don't know this, they qualify for government subsidies, which is basically where the government pays you towards your premium for your insurance. For example, I had a guy who was working at Lowe's. He was furloughed from Lowe's.
Okay.
He qualified for $2,200 for his family a month.
Wow.
So at that point, he got completely his coverage for a zero premium amount.
Because he wasn't getting the coverage from his employer anymore, and so he had to go on the open market?
No, he was getting his coverage from his employer, but he
just
was
didn't have
paying,
the income.
Correct. He was paying $750 toward his insurance that he had no income coming in.
Interesting. So how long does that process take to get approved for that now?
It's we use a website basically that you're approved within minutes.
Wow.
So basically we quote it, we write it, and then we bind the coverage within months. It actually takes us to the carrier website, and we actually put in a credit card and bind the coverage.
Nice. Okay, So that's a huge topic that I think a lot of people don't know exists. How would someone find out that information? Would their employer be the one that gives that information, or do they have to talk to one of their agents?
No, actually, that's just where you have to go to an agent. Most employer groups are just promoting their employer plans. So with a company policy or a group policy, at that point, normally a company will at least have 1 to 2, maybe 3 options for you, depending on the company, because at that point they set up the plans with an agent like myself. And the company actually does stuff to reduce their cost as well as provide very, very good benefits for their employees. So as an agent, actually my client is both the company and the employees within the company, because I'm trying to give them good coverage, but I'm also trying to keep it where it's cost effective for the company.
Right.
Yeah.
And that kind of can get confusing because, for instance, our family, we've always had insurance through my husband's side, through his employer, and we've never actually worked one-to-one with an agent. We've always gone through a portal and just signed up and knew we only had so many options. So it's relieving to know that there actually is an agent on the other side somewhere. Tell me what the difference would be between individual versus group coverage, because I think people get confused on what that is.
So an individual, if you can look at it from Insurance 101, basically you're looking at risk factors. So if I'm by myself as an individual and I'm looking at insurance, it's going to be completely based on my medical history if I try to underwrite a plan. Or if I go out to, let's say, Obamacare that doesn't actually underwrite, it's completely based on my zip code, my age, gender factors, things like that. So that's just me. If I put you on a group plan, at that point you can use basically a pool of employees to lower your cost. You can use it to lower the risk factors, like I do that with a self-insurance platform that I do for companies, where basically you take, let's for example, say 5 employees, and 4 of them are really healthy, and one particular person has a condition. Well, that's going to drive the cost down. The 4 employees are going to drive that one person's cost down because they have the 4 healthy people pulling them back into an affordable
Less
plan.
risk, yeah.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. So how does someone know whether they have access to a group plan or not?
Usually it's through their company, and you usually get those beautiful emails saying, welcome to open enrollment this year,
Yep.
things like that. Now, what I try to do, because I do a more consultative approach, is I like to actually go and do employee meetings, which is what we used to do before COVID.
Yes.
Where actually the agent goes in the room and kind of identifies what the plans kind of are, what the deductibles amount are, what the copays are, and then what's actually coming out of your pocket, because that's going to be your main concerns as an employee.
Right.
Now, what I also do is I offer my card that if at any point they want to talk to me privately, I will be glad to advise them on what plan to pick. Also, most people don't know this, insurance agents are bound by the same HIPAA rules as doctors and dentists and things like that. So if Savannah tells me a health condition, I can't even tell her employer about that health condition.
Right.
I can tell them basic information like you have an employee that has XYZ, but I cannot identify who that person is. That's bound by HIPAA rules.
So it's very confidential consulting as well.
Correct.
So let's kind of break down what different plans look like. I know we have different acronyms that we like to use when it comes to plans. We hear everything from HMO to PPO to HSA. Like let's break down what those items are. Are they all the same? Are they different?
No, they're different.
Okay.
So most people know a PPO network. That's where a network where basically you have in-network and out-of-network benefits.
Yes.
That's basically where if you go to your doctor that's in-network, you get better benefits than if you go out-of-network.
What kind of things are better benefits? Like lesser copays?
Lesser deductibles, lesser out-of-pocket, copays versus just going deductible co-insurance, things like that.
Okay.
Now on HMO, that's a limited network situation. So that basically means where you had a broad PPO network, now it's an actual condensed HMO network. Plus, they usually take the out-of-network benefits off the table.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't use your in-network level, then you don't get any coverage.
Right.
Also, you usually have to have a primary care physician for that.
To get your referrals to other doctors.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Now carriers have actually gotten smarter and make HMO networks that are called EPO, which are actually where you have in-network only benefits, but you don't have to report a primary care physician. So they're trying to do limiting the cost, but also giving you options.
Some flexibility.
Correct.
What about an HSA?
So an HSA, or what we call is a high deductible health plan. So on my side, it's a high deductible health plan that basically makes it where there's a deductible that's a higher, like a $5,000 deductible that you have that has no copays on it. The way that I usually use a term that people understand is catastrophic benefits. Because at that point, I try to explain to them there's no copays, no drug card, no any of those kind of things. You're basically paying for you to be capped. Now, most people don't know this, but Obamacare limits your exposure on your out-of-pocket to $8,550 for this year.
Okay.
So what that means is basically anything you do within the construct of the plan doesn't matter. The $8,550 is the most you will be charged for the year.
Okay.
And that's basically what you're buying in that situation. But plus you qualify for a health savings account, which is why it's termed as an HSA.
Right.
Now, a copay plan, you don't qualify for an HSA, and you do have copays tied to your doctor visits, which you immediately get. The deductibles and the deductible alone is just for catastrophic benefits. So you have a copay for your doctor visit, you have a prescription drug card, you have some different things that allow you immediate benefits rather than waiting for that deductible to kick in before those benefits happen.
Right. And when you're working towards paying off your deductible, a lot of times it's only a percentage of each visit that goes towards your deductible, because they cover like anywhere, maybe sometimes 10, 15, 20%, and then the remainder you're responsible for.
Correct. Normally that's like a deductible co-insurance arena. So
Okay.
a lot of times what you'll have is, let's say it's a $5,000 deductible 80-20 plan. So you'll have to meet your $5,000 deductible before even your co-insurance kicks in. But then at that point, you basically have an 80-20 split of the carrier paying 80% while you pay 20
Right.
until you get to that 85-50.
Okay. So how do you know what works best for you? Like what do you like? So I guess maybe because you pick each year, right?
Correct.
Every year you're going to make your elections for what you want for health insurance. What are some things, if I know that are coming in the future, that I need to consider when I am picking my health insurance for the next year?
Well, and to be honest with you, the reason why you're a consultant as an agent is because things change from time to time. We all know that. Life changes. similar like a financial advisor. Before COVID, they were advising completely different. Now they're doing more life insurance than they are doing financial planning like investments. Same thing with what I do. It's completely varies depending on what you're considering that you are going to have. Are you having a pregnancy coming up? Are you, do you have a medical condition that you pay a certain amount per month for a medication? That's stuff that I ask to try to give you the best information possible so that we can make an informed decision. Because at the end of the day, you're the one making the decision. I'm equipping you to make that decision.
Yes, you're giving us the information so we know the options that we have moving forward. Because every year is different. Especially like someone like me, I have smaller children and they were not sickly babies, thank goodness. And we had good pregnancies, but we're getting to that age where sports are coming up. And now we're looking at, okay, what happens if you bust a bone doing this, or you have to go to the ER for that? Those things are how we now are assessing our insurance of how much cash do we want to pay out of pocket before insurance kicks in. Because we've always had a traditional HSA account through our employer. Only because we've noticed a lot of what we need, we usually pay cash for. So it made more sense for us to take that money from the HSA to pay cash instead of doing, like, we like chiropractic pet care. We would rather pay cash for chiropractic care than to go to a doctor every month because we're sick. We're trying to be preventative. I think there's a lot of plans that are really kind of pushing that preventative maintenance too. Well,
and it depends. Like I had a similar situation. Before I got married, I did a high deductible health plan with an HSA because I liked the value of contributing toward an HSA fund and having that roll year after year. Well, when I got married, my daughter has a particular condition that requires medication. And that medication is a high-cost medication. So both me and my wife, even though we came from the world of high deductible health plans and HSA, at that point we had to make a decision to go to a copay plan simply to get the actual copay dollars of the prescription drug plan.
To start going towards your deductible,
correct.
Right?
Will go toward your out-of-pocket expenses.
Out-of-pocket expenses,
correct.
Okay.
Now the good part is, and most people don't know this, so when you contribute toward an HSA and you move to a copay plan, you can still use those funds toward your medical insurance. So for a long time, we actually used all our HSA dollars for those expenses. Because most people, but you can't contribute, but you can use them for the medical expenses.
So if you had a stash, you could still keep using it. Correct. Okay. So let's talk about receipts. I know some plans require you to have receipts to prove, some don't. What's the difference on those?
So usually when you're doing a receipt basis, you're talking about a cash upfront policy, like an indemnity product as I call it.
Okay.
Where basically you go to the doctor, they pay you a certain amount per visit, and then you have to send in your receipts to get your money back. With a major medical plan through a major carrier, they don't do that because that's all done on the back end.
Okay.
So when you go and you present your card, they actually call the Blue Cross Blue Shield, find out what your benefits are, and then they go ahead and submit the claim for you. That's why in the mail you get an explanation of benefits.
Okay.
Now most people don't do this, and they really should, because the biggest thing is you're supposed to match up your explanation of benefits with your bill, because the bill is supposed to match that completely. Most people either just pay the bill, don't want to mess with it, and don't match it, or they don't even know what an explanation of benefits is. They see something from their insurance carrier and they throw it away.
Yep.
That's also why you call an insurance agent, because I'm glad to do that work for you. Most agents don't do that. I will gladly reconcile those issues for you pro bono. So if you want me to take a look, by the way, I do a lot of free advice. So I will actually look at your existing policy. I'll look at those kind of things like matching up explanation of benefits or just advice on what you currently have. I'll be glad to do that.
Love it. Love it. So let's talk a little bit more in the indemnity. Why would someone go with an indemnity program versus a major medical program?
Because the Obamacare or the major medical plan is just too costly.
Okay.
At that point where I always go the direction of trying to find you the best comprehensive coverage I can find. But if I give you a price point and you say, Mike, that's just too expensive for me per month, at that point I'm going to look at things like indemnity products, which are cash up front. I'm going to look at faith sharing programs. We've heard about those things where basically it's not a insurance policy. It's a group of people that are paying into a group that basically says, if I have a situation, you're going to pay this going forward. So those are kind of things I look at just from trying to reduce the cost of their monthly premium.
Right, because monthly premiums can really get out of hand for a lot of people.
Especially for a family right now, because that's the other thing I educate people. So most people are frustrated with Obamacare.
Yes.
And I will say this, Obamacare did what it set out to do. Most people are frustrated with it, but it wanted to give affordable insurance to individuals. Now, if you look at it just look at your company policy, for example. When you look at your employee-only rate, that's widely different than your spouse or children rate.
Yes.
Because Obamacare really wasn't thinking of families, which I really wish they would have.
Right.
But so you have a lot of people that are actually finding low-cost options for family members because in all honesty, companies, if a spouse has other option for coverage, companies want you to go that other coverage.
Right.
They actually encourage you.
Them.
It's less risk for them. It's actually a less premium for the family, things like that. But as an agent, I also weigh those options for you.
Right.
What would be the best benefit? Because sometimes with if you have like your husband works for a large employer, those benefits of companies that are large, like 500, 600 employees, are going to be vastly richer than anything you're going to find on a small business market. And when I say small business, I'm talking about 50 or lower on employee base. So at that point, or individual insurance. So at that point, I've had a lot of people say, Mike, I'm coming off of my company that's a large employer and I'm a COBRA. I don't make an assumption saying you should get off COBRA. I say, what's your monthly premium?
Right.
And then at that point, I tell them whether or not I can get there or not.
Because COBRA is that gap, right?
Yes, COBRA is a continuation policy that you have when you leave employment. So your company, whenever you leave employment, they extend your coverage through the end of the month, and then you're eligible for COBRA, and you have 3 months afterwards to elect that. But what it is at that point, they take the contribution that they made as a company off of it, and also charge you a 2% admin fee on top of that.
So that's why COBRA gets so much more expensive.
Correct. So unless you have high-cost drugs, things like that, usually COBRA is not a cost-effective measure.
Right.
Now, in the state of Texas, we also have state continuation for 20 and lower, which you also have the same thing, just on a state level versus COBRA, which is on the federal level.
No, that makes sense. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's interesting because health insurance comes into play in so many different roles. There's the role with the small business where you're maybe the owner and you're trying to set this up for your employees. And then there's health insurance, maybe if you get into an accident and then you have medical bills and you're trying to figure out how you're going to pay your medical bills when you've been injured. I bring that up only because I know that part intimately as being paralegal in the past. We had to go subrogate a lot of bills. And many people don't realize how to handle their bills when they've been injured. Can you comment on any of that? That's a total left field. That's a left field.
So that's like an accident policy, and you can basically use that as a supplemental insurance plan with a major medical plan.
Yes.
Things like we've heard Aflac, Colonial, things like that. I actually do partner with agents, or I can actually do it myself that can write those kind of plans. Now, you mentioned subrogation. Most people don't realize that within the medical insurance carryover major medical plan, they actually have a subrogation process that's going on behind the scenes. So they're trying to do things like coordinating benefits with like a primary or a secondary insurance policy, or trying to make sure that the treatment you're having is medically necessary.
Right.
So they're asking the doctor more information about your situation. They're not trying to make it where the doctor is pushed a certain direction. They're simply trying to have a conversation to find out, is the treatment plan appropriate and is it cost effective for the plan?
Right.
And so those are subrogation things that happen behind the scenes that people don't really realize is going on.
Yes. Let's talk about from a solo business owner that maybe has a couple of employees. There's ways that they can set up and you're not a CPA, I understand that, but that you probably can partner with CPAs and tax advisors on how they can set up plans so that it's an advantage to them as a business owner, but then still provide benefits to their who are they?
Correct.
Their employees.
Yeah.
Those people.
So you can't set up a company solely for the purposes of medical insurance. That's illegal.
Correct.
But if you choose to do so and become an LLC, or if you be an S Corp or S Corp or anything like that, if you just have an owner and a W-2, at that point you qualify as a company policy. Okay. So at that point we can look at group options. We can also look at something that I'm really passionate about because it's actually about 50% lower rates. Still has a good PPO network, Obamacare compliant major medical coverage. Yeah, coverage. But it actually is 50% lower on the premiums. But it's underwritten, so it requires a lot more work that most agents don't want to do. Also, I can do that on only 1099 employees.
Oh, okay.
Like right now, I'm talking to real estate companies and getting the word out on that kind of
Yes,
program.
because we're all 1099 essentially.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some options that I also look at. And so, like, the one thing I want to reiterate is one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
That's the thing. If an agent is telling you that one size fits all, normally that's going to bite you. It might not bite you today. It might not bite you tomorrow, but it will bite you. That's why it's always good to have a person that you can reach out to, regardless of the time of day and or time of year, and
Right.
reach out and get some advice. That's one of the things that my background being at Blue Cross allows me.
Yes.
If you call me at Saturday night, I will pick up the phone and I'll tell you how to manage your cost at that point if you're at the hospital
Yeah, because
until
you don't
Monday.
want to be in the hospital on a Saturday
No.
night. Nobody wants to be there. Yeah, it happens. So
Yes.
you need someone you can have accessibility to.
Correct.
And that also reminded me of timing. Like, when can someone look at their benefits? Are they locked in? Like, I know certain programs are locked in. We talked about this earlier. Like for me with my husband and his major employer, we're locked in for the year what we chose at the beginning of the year. What are some examples of when someone may be able to choose their benefits again throughout the year?
Well, and there's more now than there was after COVID because there's qualifying events.
Yes.
So you can have a qualifying event during the course of the year to change your policy or your plan.
And that's what?
That's like you have loss of coverage, you have a divorce, you have a change in income is a big one right now.
Oh.
If you at one point had a certain income level and you dropped, that is a qualifying event. Most people don't know that right now with COVID.
Is there a percentage base or
No,
is it
any drop whatsoever at that point. Because at that point, what they're really ethically trying to do is when you were sitting down at open enrollment, if everything remained constant, you can't change.
Right.
But if something changed that would have changed your decision during open enrollment,
Yep.
ask your HR person, ask your agent. It's better to have the conversation than not have it and not know that you have that option to
Right.
change the coverage to reduce how much is coming out of your check, or to sometimes it's actually the reverse. You actually have more income coming in and you want richer benefits.
Yeah.
That's also a good
So
conversation.
if you get a promotion of some sort, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Having a baby. What about like if you adopt a child too? Does that still count?
Correct.
Because they're now
Yep.
one of your.
Anytime there's a birth or adoption, especially if it's where you're at first you were a husband and wife and you add a baby, at that point you go into another demographic where you're
Yes.
basically, instead of employee spouse, you're employee family.
Yep, which
So
is
that
a whole
changes
nother
quite a bit.
category for sure.
Correct.
And an expense. What else do you need to tell us that I didn't ask you?
Just that the biggest thing is trust, and like go out and find an agent that you trust.
What are some good questions to ask an agent to know whether they know what they're doing?
I wouldn't say there are specific questions to ask. It's
Okay.
just about the comfortability. Like we talk a lot about, it's a relationship.
It is.
So it's always about what you're comfortable, who are you comfortable with. If you're comfortable with your current agent, then great. If that current agent hasn't talked to you in 2 years and is still making money off of you, that's probably not a good agent.
I need a new conversation.
Correct. You probably need a conversation at that point.
Right.
Because the biggest thing is, as an agent, to advise properly, you really need to know your clients.
Yes.
And that doesn't stop at open enrollment.
Right.
It doesn't stop whenever you write the policy and you move on down the road.
Well, because a lot of times we, as the customer or the client, don't quite understand what questions, what are the triggers that change things. So as you're hearing that conversation, you're going, ooh, that's something we need to talk about, when they're just maybe telling you about something new that happened. And you realize, oh, your kids are joining sports. Maybe we need to look at this. I've got a contact for you that might be a good supplemental plan for you. Or, oh, you're having a baby, or you're adopting a baby. Like any of those conversations, a lot of people don't think, I need to go update my health insurance. That's not the first thing
Nope.
they're thinking of.
Well, and the biggest one is when you're having a baby.
Yes.
I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times I have this conversation because you're just not in that mindset. I've been there. I have 2 kids.
Yep.
So when you're having a kid, you're excited. You're thinking about all that stuff. You're not thinking of medical insurance.
No.
So
No.
it never fails. Normally the baby, and this is something to know, the newborn baby will actually go on the mother's plan with just basically saying baby boy or baby girl.
Okay.
And you don't even have to give a social or anything like that at that point. Now, within 30 days,
Yeah.
you're supposed to reach out to your HR or your agent to tell the name and the date of birth and the social security number. So do that process, because like I said, a lot of people don't remember to do that.
Yep.
And then we have to backdate
Well, they're
it and
sleep
things like that.
deprived. You haven't even slept in a month.
That's
Come
true.
on.
That's true too.
That's so true. What about, and so like during the pregnancy side, you don't have to worry about it because you're just worrying about the individual woman's coverage at that point. So if I have
Correct.
complications during a pregnancy, it's going to fall under my own, but maybe I need to look at my policy.
Well, and actually that's a good conversation. 'Cause I've had that conversation quite a bit because ladies that are pregnant ask me that question. How does the insurance work at that point?
Yes.
So what'll happen normally is your OB will basically start to do your well exams.
Yep.
But your well exams actually go toward your deductible. It
Okay.
could be a particular, they usually do a fee, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They go toward your deductible and they accumulate over the 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens on the birth is that's a great
big bill.
Yeah. Well, and depending on where it goes, like I tell people, I'm like, it depends on what claim gets there first. Because you have the hospital claim that might get there first, or the doctor visit, or the doctor claim that might get there first.
Yep.
So if the hospital claim gets there first, they don't know that you matched anything toward your deductible.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be honest with you, the doctor is accumulating that money toward your deductible, but not reporting it to your insurance until the actual
Until
event.
the end. Oh.
So whenever you get there, at that point is whether or not you met your deductible or not, and you have to kind of work through that EOB billing process to say, hey, I paid over here, so I'm not really obligated to pay you over there.
Yep.
And so you have to kind of manage
Everyone
that as
wants
well.
to be paid.
Exactly.
Because there's not just those two bills. You got the anesthesiologist, you've got the hearing doctor, you got all those people that pop in throughout your 2-day visit. So that's a good conversation, a really great example to sit down and have those conversations. Gosh, how do we find you?
You can find me actually. So I'm at GustaInsurance.com.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my partner on that website. It has all of our contact information. You can definitely reach me. The only number that I give out is my cell phone number, so you can reach me 24/7 if you choose to.
And I'll put that on the screen so y'all can get to that.
Yep. And so that's
And you're
the terms.
located here locally.
Correct.
Where are we at right now?
We're in Plano, Texas.
Yes, we're
And
like West Plano, Texas.
Correct.
We're in Legacy.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we have 2 locations actually, and we do all states.
Okay.
So I am here in Plano, Texas, but my business partner is in Tampa, Florida. So yeah, sometimes I'd like to
You
go over there
lucked
and
out
have the
on that
beach.
deal,
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah, I did.
Let me go visit, have a lunch.
Yes, exactly.
I'll come with you. We'll go. I'll look at some rental properties over there.
There you go.
You know, second homes. We can get some second homes.
There you go.
We can ride the whole thing off. Okay. Perfect. I think that covers a lot of it.
Yes.
There's a ton. The good thing to know is Michael's also well connected. So if there's something that he can't help you with, he's got a person that can help you. And that's why I like introducing all my people, because we're all interconnected and we all know enough about each other's business to really pass that business along. So if you have any questions for Michael and you want to reach out, I'm going to put his contact info, and we'll see you at the next episode. Bye, y'all.